Big name interviews, advice on cooking brisket and ribs, and the only host willing to share his honest opinion on all things important in the world of barbecue. It's the Barbecue Central Show.
Welcome back. Thanks to Daniel Vaughn again for talking about Texas barbecue. The dude did 100 barbecue restaurants in less than 70 days. Watch out, heart attack. It's coming. I got one word. That's right. All right. As I mentioned in the top of the show, I get a almost weekly, sometimes two, sometimes one every other week, email from a guy named Malcom Reed. You can find him at How to BBQ Right. That's his blog, and he wrote one recently about catering barbecue. So we race over to the hotline and join friend of the show, Malcom Reed from Killer Hogs. Malcom, how are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, Greg. How's it going?
I'm doing absolutely fabulous. Malcom, let me get this chat window away here so we can see your smiling face. Wanted to have you back on tonight because, you know, it never fails. I'm planning out shows, and I'm looking for great content to kind of keep the show fresh, and it seems like that inbox always dings with something from you that seems to really fit either the show theme or is just something that I've always wanted to talk about and that I don't necessarily have the wherewithal and the expertise to choose from. And that's why I always like to lean on you. So tonight we're going to be talking about catering barbecue. And it always seems like for me, especially a backyard hack like myself, you have, you know, maybe a neighbor or two over one time and they're like, oh, this stuff is so good. And would you cater a graduation party for my daughter? Or my boss at work's love barbecue. Would you do it for us? When we look at barbecue catering, some general tips right off the bat before we get into it a little bit more on things that you need to consider when thinking about getting into that catering option.
Yeah, well, first you got to make sure that you can handle the job, man. That's the number one thing. If you bite off more than you can chew, just right off the gate, you're going to be bad off. That's what we learned the hard way. Unfortunately, you know, we had smaller cookers, and we would get people that wanted to cook an event just like you talked about for a small, you know, rehearsal dinner or something like that, or a birthday party, and if you don't really plan it out, you know, and you got to make a price list of everything that you're going to buy, what it's going to take. That's the number one thing when it comes to catering, because every dollar counts that you spend, and you really got to sit down and, you know, work your schedule out too. I mean, it's just it's a lot goes into it, but it's, you know, you can take on these small jobs and get a little hold on it and kind of get an idea of what's going on before you take on something bigger.
All right, Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. By the way, your setup in the background is absolutely fabulous. Trophies, you got the banner in the back. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. When we talk about... Go ahead.
I was going to say that's the MB inside of me coming out, man. It's all about the presentations.
That's right. I
got to look good everywhere you go.
Getting ready to get a great speech and tell me why whole hogs and hams are absolutely succulent. When we talk about setting the price, Malcom, you know, things that I initially think of when people ask me, it's like, well, what about sides and what about plates and all of this other stuff? Is there suggestions that you would tell, like if I was going to call you up on the phone and say, Malcom, somebody's asking me to do a party, what services should I offer them? Do you have any? I mean, I
always, you know, I try to offer them everything they're going to need. I mean, but you know, the warehouse clubs are going to be your friend, man. I'm always going to Sam's and just taking my notepad and writing, you know, jotting down prices and kind of try to keep a running tab of what things are going to cost you. That way you know how to price it. I mean, you know, you see a lot of this rule, you know, a thumb for catering, you know, double the cost or whatever is going to, you know, get your money back. But if you don't watch it, you can get in over your head real fast. So when you're pricing stuff, you have to, you know, just keep everything in mind, even from the gas it's taking you going back and forth to the aluminum foil that you're going to cover the pans with. Everything costs. So really tracking it is the key.
So when you're looking at all of these other ancillary items, the foil and the plates and all that, when you're marking down, it's $7 for 500 plates and it's $2 for 500 spoons. How are you delineating that from customer to customer? Is one customer buying the spoons and one customer buying the aluminum foil, or what?
Well, not really. I mean, you know, of course, if you're doing it a lot, you're always going to have a stockpile of stuff that you can use. But the small jobs is where you get into it costing you money, because a lot of things you can't buy in a small quantity. So you really have to just break it down. And, you know, say, for instance, Sam's, they do a lot of that for you. I mean, they'll tell you on the label on the shelf what each item's costing per, you know, after the prices broke down. So you got a good idea of what you actually have in it. You just have to figure out a way to monetize it to where you're going to make some money selling it.
All right. So, and then meat, typically it's like the double the cost. How do you put together a game plan? What are the most important things that you need to take into consideration when you start this barbecue catering business?
Well, when you start, first off, make sure you got a grill or your equipment's going to handle it. Go to your local, laws and see what the health department requires. See if you have to have the food safety, serve safe training. See if you have to have a business license. I mean, a lot of times we're talking about small things, friends and family, and you can fly under the radar with some of that stuff. But if you're really going to get serious about it, you have to have everything. You have to have a commercial kitchen. You have to, there's all kinds of different regulations depending on where you live. But I mean, always play by the rules, because you don't want to get anybody sick. That's the number one thing. It's going to ruin your reputation. There's all kinds of things that have to factor into it, but I'm not saying you can't go out and cook your friend's birthday party for 50 people and, not be a success.
Are there things that you need to ask the customer in order to ensure your success?
Well, most of the time somebody's had my barbecue or knows somebody that's had it. So word of mouth has done a lot, but I always want to talk to them, get a definite head count. I mean, I overestimate usually just for safety, 10% over. I don't want anybody to be not satisfied with what I'm giving them. Always check back with them after I've probably fulfilled an order. I mean, that's just some rules that I do. And I mean, I know the quality of the barbecue is going to be good because that's what, we do it every day. So, I mean, it's just taking the time and patience and tracking your prices. That's what can really get you in trouble.
And are you looking to, and I guess it kind of depends on what type of equipment do you have. Like for myself, I don't have anything that's necessarily mobile unless I was breaking down the WSMs and taking them on site somewhere. Do you want to cook stuff like you would at a competition? Do you want to try and do as much stuff on that particular site as you can in order to garner that safety side of things? What's your advice there?
Well, I've come across both ways. Some customers want you to come out and cook it on site. They'll let you use their kitchen or their setups and stuff. But a lot of times it's just as easy to cook it off site too and take it to them. There's going to be more money in an on site cook because you can charge more because you're putting on a show. You're not just there cooking. A lot of people want to see what you're doing and how you're doing it, and that's part of what you're selling. Especially for us. So if we're doing whole hogs or something like that, they always want a presentation to go with it. And it makes you look like a professional, you know what you're doing, and the customers are happy when you can do that too. So if you can use their stuff, it's great, but you need to always have access to your own.
Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. Of course, visit the website, howtobbqright.com. There's also a bunch of really great videos on there where Malcom is either evaluating products or showing you prep work and all this other great stuff. Do you like to deal? This could be a foolish question because it seems whenever I bring up chicken, everybody starts to get skittish. But do you like to cater chicken, or would you rather just stay away from that and deal with the pork butts and the briskets and the ribs if possible?
If I do chicken, I like to do it pulled. That way I can, serve them fresh chicken. It's hard. Chicken's one of the hardest things to hold and be fresh. I mean, if you're talking about cooking pieces of chicken for somebody, I like doing it on site. It's no problem because it's coming right off the grill and going to the table. But from my experience, just catering pieces of chicken, the quality is just not there usually. I mean, your window for keeping it fresh is real small. But with pulled meat, you can mix a little sauce into it, keep your moisture in it, keep it warm, keep it in the Cambro, and it stays pretty well, fresh. So if you're going to go the chicken route, go pulled.
All right. And do you find that your customers dig pulled chicken? I'm sure it's probably not something they're necessarily used to seeing. Usually it's pieces coming off the grill, but pulled chicken seems to be a fan favorite then?
Well, it's something we offer. You don't sell a lot of it. Some people always want something besides beef or pork. I mean, we run into that a lot. So, I mean, we're not into doing seafood and stuff like that. I mean, it's going to be something barbecued. So, chicken is one thing that that you get some requests for. I mean, I don't do it a lot, but sometimes we do.
Now, there seems to be kind of a health conscious movement going along? So if you're doing, 2 or 3 of the standard stuff, do you get any weird requests for something that might be off that barbecue or grilling path that people are asking you to cook?
I get a lot of requests for crawfish. That's something we've been doing too, and that's a whole. I had a good friend from Louisiana that really taught me how to cook them a long time ago, and we do them here at the house a lot. But that's one of the big requests. I bet I get an email every week want me to give them a quote for crawfish. This started about around the first of the year, and we're just now seeing the prices come down to where it's even feasible to do them. But it's a lot of fun, especially if you've never been to a big crawfish bowl.
All right, so you get your stuff planned out. You get all the information that you can possibly garner from the customer. You follow up with them, a couple days in advance to make sure that nothing has happened. Are you doing your shopping for the stuff well in advance, or is it just, and obviously the dry stuff doesn't matter, but for the meats, is it, the day before? What's your time frame on getting the eats in-house and starting to get prepped on that?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have an account with U.S. Foods, so I can get fresh meat daily, so it's not a problem. I don't like to hold it as long as I can, just because you run into problems with having a refrigeration space for that much meat. So usually I'm going to set it up to where my truck comes either that morning I'm going to cook it, or either I can go pick it up at the wheel call. So it works out really great. But I mean, when we were smaller and getting meat from Sam's or Costco, I would usually go a day or so ahead of time and try to keep everything in the refrigerator as much as possible, or giant coolers with a lot of ice on it. But that the meat, you really want it fresh as possible to start.
Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. We're talking barbecue catering. Malcom, part of this is going to come down to a sales process as well. You got people calling in. They're obviously going to want a price. And I think it's human nature for a lot of people to think as they're telling somebody, what are they thinking about the price? Am I going to quote them too high? Am I going to quote them? Well, you're thinking, am I quoting them too high? They're going to tell me no. And then if they say yes, you're thinking, did I quote them too low, and am I going to lose my ass on this? So, I mean, you have to be firm and direct, and you have to feel comfortable as a business person to use that dirty P word called profit.
Oh, you're absolutely right, man. When we first started, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of your friends or family or somebody like that, and everybody's wanting a deal. But you got to understand that it's, you can lose at this game real easy. So what I say is, don't sell yourself short. The first time that you sell something to somebody at a lower price, they're going to want that price every time. They're never going to let you raise the price on them. So if you lose some customers because your prices are too high, that's fine. That's going to happen. And it happens to me every day too. I mean, I bet I quote, for every 10 quotes, I might get a sale, but that's no problem. I know the ones I'm selling to really like the barbecue and are wanting a quality product. To me, that means more than being the cheapest guy out there.
Now, you've talked about the pit, making sure that you have the right equipment to be able to handle the jobs that you might be quoting. Are there any other really key pieces of equipment for catering that you should have?
Well, you got to have some way to hold the meat fresh, especially if you're transporting it when it's cooked. I mean, so you're talking about your Cambros or your Carlisle, food carriers. They're just basic catering food carriers. You don't have to have the ones that necessarily plug up and have heaters and all that built into them, because your meat's going to stay fresh for 4 to 5 hours in an insulated carrier. But I mean, just your basic barbecue stuff that we use at contest tables and coolers for keeping the stuff cold when you got it, and your food service pans and stuff like that. That's all the important pieces of equipment. I mean, the other thing is just your smoker. I mean, that's pretty much all you need.
All right, let me ask you this, Malcom. I'm going to put you on the spot here and see your catering expertise. Let's say we have a 125-person event that's going to be outside, obviously off-site cooking. 3 meats. Do you do veggies, like potatoes and stuff like that?
We do sides. All
right, 2 veggies. 2 veggies, a salad, and drinks and dessert. Is that, what do you think we're looking at here?
Per person for 3 meats, I would say you're going to be about between $13 and $15 a head, depending on what the meats are. That's not including ribs.
Because ribs are going to be more expensive then.
Right. Ribs are always more expensive. That's what pushes it up. I mean.
And then if you're
talking ribs, if you get talking ribs, brisket, and pulled pork, you're going to be up around 22, somewhere like that a head.
And then meat, the veggies and the salad and the drinks, that's all going to be additional on top of that.
Well, that would be figured in. I would, the sides, most sides I'm running, less than $1 a head person. And that's the way I figure it. When you go break the cost down and say beans or slaw or potato salad or something like that, you're 30 or 40 cents your cost. But then, you turn around and sell it to them for $1, $1.50, something like that is in my area. That's generally what it runs. But, and when you're talking to 125 people, you can cut the price down a little bit because you're selling a bigger volume. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Small, say if you called up and you had 20, 25 people you wanted to feed, well, your price is going to be a lot higher because it's costing me more to cook a smaller load than it is that big load because I see the profit that I'm making off the big one.
Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. We're talking barbecue catering. Malcom, before I turn you loose here, do you want to take the Survey Tuesday questions?
Sure, man.
All right, here we go. Survey Tuesday questions. Question number 1. Do you think barbecue pitmasters will be a winner or a loser this season?
I think it'll be a loser. They're going to mix in, the original format with maybe a little bit of their challenge style format. So I think it'll be a lot better.
All right. The best barbecue accessory to have is?
Oh, a thermopin.
All right.
You got to have it.
A lot of thermopins tonight. Favorite barbecue book?
Mike Namey Mills' book, Peace, Love, and Barbecue. That's probably my favorite.
That's the first time I've heard that tonight. Typically, that's one of the first one or two out of people's mouths when we're talking about books. We are talking with Malcom Reed. You can find him mastering the pit with Killer Hogs competition cooking team, which is killerhogs.com, and also visit his barbecue blog, howtobbqright.com. Malcom, always appreciate the tips, and especially on the catering thing tonight. I know I've learned a lot. So we'll look for you again soon. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, Greg. No problem, man. I appreciate you having me. Have a good night.
You got it. There he is. Malcom Reed from Killer Hogs and howtobbqright.com.